In this video, I'm going to look at that part-time versus full-time debate. Should you have part-time workers or should you have full-time workers? It could be a case study, could be a 9-marker, could be a 12-marker if you're doing 9 to 1. Okay, points 4, why you should hire part-time workers. Well, it's usually cheaper. So if you're a part-time worker, it's likely you will be paid a wage, not a salary, and it's likely that wage will be per hour and the per hour rate will be less. So if it's less, then it will mean that the costs of labour are reduced, and if the cost of labour are reduced, the total costs are less. If total costs are less, then profit will go up. The impact on the business is profits go up. Okay, number 2 is, and probably a bigger point, is flexibility, because if you've got part-time workers, then the business can schedule exactly the hours they want you as the part-time worker to turn up to work. So there's no wastage, there's no knocking around and have a cup of tea for half an hour before work starts. Bang, you're in. And that's what the business wants, because then you will be very productive. If you're productive, that's great for the employee. If you're manufacturing, for example, and you're making stuff in the factory, the more productive you are, the more things you make. More things you make, more things they can sell, more things they can sell, more revenue, more profits. Okay. Number 3, increased range of, and this is the key word, potential employees. Because you could have a business that wants some workers, and if they change the advertisement they do for their job from full-time workers to full-time or part-time workers, then you're opening that up to potentially like a working parent that has some super skills in what you need, but they couldn't have applied for the job if it was just full-time workers, because they've got their things to do, they've got to look after their kids or whatever. So if you use part-time workers, then you get the chance of more potential employees with some super skills. Okay, so that's a great point. Number 4 is further options, because if you are doing part-time workers, then the newer situations that have come out in the last decade is you've got the option to do a job share. So a job share is when 2 people do effectively one full-time person's work or hours. You could argue that is good, because if you've got a job share, you might have a job where you require 2 types of skills, and you could have person A that has skill 1 and person B that has skill 2. So together, if they work half the week each, they make a really powerful, potent combination of an employee that may not be possible if it was just one full-time employee. And potentially, if it was one full-time employee, that person would have some super skills, so they would need to be paid a lot more. So maybe it's cheaper as well doing that. I'll go into the problems with job shares later. Also, ZHC, zero-hour contracts. Zero-hour contracts are a more, I suppose, decisive version of this flexibility, because the firm, in the case of a part-time worker, will be able to say your exact hours you're going to work, and with part-time you will have a contract maybe for 15 hours a week, and they will say your 15 hours are then. With zero-hour contracts, it's a more extreme version of that. You might get a text message in the morning saying you're not needed today. You might get a text message tomorrow saying you're not needed today. You might get a text message the next day saying you're needed from 9 till 11, and you'll only be paid 2 hours wage per hour from the business. So they're keeping their cost of production so cheap, their labour costs are so low, because they're just asking their employees to come in when they need them. They're not restricted to that contract like in part-time workers to 15 or 20 hours or whatever the contract says in terms of hours per week for that part-time worker. So they're slightly different. Part-time, zero-hour contracts, slightly different. I'll go into the problems of zero-hour contracts later. Like, on the other side, we've got why you should stay with full-time workers. So if you're a business, why you shouldn't bother with those part-time workers and you should go with those full-time workers. Number 1, it's an argument that part-time workers, well, they're there less, potentially they're there just to suit their lifestyle, so they are less loyal. And if they're less loyal, it's likely they're less motivated, and if they're less motivated, they're less productive, and depending on which function within the business they work in, whether it's HR, marketing, or sales, or finance, or whatever, then it will make a difference, have an impact on the business, probably revenue or cash flow, and therefore profit. Number 2, if you've got more part-time workers, so you've got a business that's moved towards part-time workers, a problem with that, and a reason why you should stick with full-time employees, is that more part-time workers means more subordinates. Subordinates being those people under the manager, the people the manager bosses around, the subordinates. More subordinates causes more work for the manager. because you've got a wider span of control, and it's just all the problems with a wider span of control. So wider span of control, increased work for managers. More work for managers, it could mean they can do less one-on-one conversations in terms of direction or motivation of what you need. So it could lead to a less quality and quantity of communication. So that could be a problem with having too many subordinates. And also they may not know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. All of that, lower labour productivity, go through the same mechanics. Depends on the department and the impact on the business. Number 3, and this is going to the other side of the job share argument. So the job share argument, having 2 employees doing one job, perhaps they have 2 different skill sets, that makes it a powerful combination. However, the problem with that is that it's likely they've got to have some sort of handover where they communicate with each other. If that's not done well, and where's the time going to come for that, because there must be some overlap, then it could lead to more confusion between the 2 of them. And look, overall, it's the same mechanics going through. That's going to just let more confusion, less productive, less quality or quantity of whatever they produce. Impact on the business, not going to be great. And 0-hour contracts. So we've said like why that's good for the business, but the problem with 0-hour contracts are fundamentally they're just demotivating. If you just got every day to wait for like your text message to see if you've got to work today, it's not going to breed like a sense of loyalty and motivation to work for that company. So it's likely to lead to lower staff retention. What I mean by that is that employees are likely to leave the company quite quickly. They're not going to stay around for that long under those circumstances. Lower staff retention, that means you need to keep doing lots of training costs, and that's probably going to be the initial training costs, so the induction training, the first week of training. That's just someone has to keep doing loads and loads of induction training. That's someone that you're paying in terms of labour, increased costs, not great. Also, if you've got lower staff retention, people aren't staying at your company because they're on 0-hour contracts, you're likely to lose the skills that they've learned since that training's happened. That could be the induction training, it could be also on-the-job training. And you lose those skills, it just means the productivity lowers. If you'd learned, bang, how to do your job potentially in a supermarket, how to quickly shelf stack, and then a new person comes in and they have to learn how to shelf stack. They got to go, well, where's eggs? Where's bread? They've got all those questions they need to go back through. It's going to take ages before they get to that same special level. So you go through the same arguments. I'm going to, in a minute, do a video on what you could evaluate on these things. I hope that helps.